So we're going to be measuring a shirt. So the first measurement that we're going to take here is our front and our back neck drop. So we're going to place our ruler here at the high point shoulder, and we're going to measure down to our neck seam, which is right here. And we just make sure that this is nice and closed and everything as flat as possible. I know there's a collar here, so it's a little bit difficult. So now that we're all positioned, we're going to measure from the ruler down to this neck seam, which is about 3 1/4. Yeah, 3 1/4. And then we can also just get our back neck seam really easy from here. So we just open up the collar a little bit, put our ruler back, and then we measure to our seam, which is right here. So our back neck drop is 5/8. Now we're going to take our bust measurement. So the bust measurement comes from 1 inch below the armhole. So I'm going to measure 1 inch down, place a pin, and then measure across. Inch. This is a little funny here. And 1 inch. So now we're going to measure across from our seam to our other seam, and we have 20 3/4. Now we're going to take our waist, which comes down 17 inches. So I'm going to measure down. And then we're going to measure across. So this one side seam is kind of funky. All right. We're at the waist, 19 3/4. And that measurement will be doubled. And then we also have to measure around the entire sweep, and that measurement will be doubled as well. So we're going to take a tape measure and just walk our way around the edge. And we're looking at 24 inches for the sweep. So that'll be doubled, so that's 48. Next, we're going to take the sleeve cuff. So to take the height of the sleeve cuff, we take our sleeve, make sure it's laying nice and flat, and then just measure from the bottom to where it meets the sleeve, and that's 3 inches. We can also look at this back here. This has a placket. So we'll look at the placket length. So here's the placket. We'll measure it from the cuff up to where it closes, which is 3 inches. Now we're going to take the front length. So to do that, we're just going to straighten our garment back out. And we'll measure from high point shoulder down to the bottom of the garment. And that's 26 3/4. We can come to the back now. Make sure that we're all flat. And we can measure our across shoulder. Which is 16 3/4. We can also do our across back, which is going to be 5 inches down. So that's actually at this seam right here. If it's made properly, it should be the same on both, which looks good. So we'll just measure across this yoke in the back for our across back. And that is 16 inches. And then we also need to get our sleeve length from the center back. So the trick to do this is you line it up like this so you can figure out what your center back is. You can put a pin there, right at the fold. Oopsies. And now I know my center back. So we lay it back out. Make sure everything's nice and smooth. And then we'll measure from the center point to here. Hold it nice and tight. Get through the shoulder. And then all the way down to the bottom of the sleeve. And that looks like it's 33 1/8. Now, while we're looking at the sleeve, we should also look at the muscle, which is going to be 1 inch from this point at the armpit in the armhole. So we're going to measure out 1 inch at the seam right here. We're going to put a pin there to make sure that we get the right spot. Make sure it's all flat. And then we're going to measure straight across right here. And our muscle is 7 3/8. And we should also look at the sleeve opening. And the sleeve opening is 4.5, and that will be doubled, and so will the muscle measurement as well. So we should also look at the front again here and get some of these details. So we have this collar, and we have a collar stand too. So we'll do the collar height, which is 2 1/4, and then we'll measure our collar stand, which is right below the collar, and that's 1 1/8. Now we can also get our collar length. So our collar length is 18 3/4, and that's at the edge. I also like to get the measurement where it meets the collar stand because they are different measurements. So now we'll measure that as well. And that's 16 1/4. Another thing that we should also look at is our button placement. And I like to do the first button placement and the last button placement. So from high point shoulder, we lay out our ruler and then just measure down. We always measure to the center of the button. So that's about 8 3/4 to the first button. And then from the last button here at the bottom to the edge is about 5 3/4. And we also have these little slits at the side right here. So we should also measure that detail as well. And that is 1 1/4. One last measurement that we should definitely have is right here, our neck width. So we measure from high point shoulder to high point shoulder on the other side. And we get 7 5/8. And that's how we measure a shirt.